Hello, and welcome to the negotiation clock face template. Before we dive into the details of this template, let me introduce myself first. My name is Aleksandra Panic, and I'm the head of product at Procurement Tactics. I'm really glad that you're here. The team at Procurement Tactics has over 20 years of experience in procurement and negotiations, which means we have a thing or two to teach you. So let's buckle up and let's get started. The negotiation clock phase is a visual representation of various negotiation styles, with each stage around the clock representing a more complex kind of negotiation. This model was introduced by Steve Gates in his book, Negotiation Book: Your Definitive Guide to Successful Negotiating. The negotiation clock phase is not a step-by-step guide, but a reference point that guides you in your negotiation approach. Negotiations can fluctuate between the clock phases, and the negotiation clock phase will help you determine which phase you're currently at with your supplier and therefore navigate this. The clock phase can be split into two groups, with the right-hand side, 1 to 6 o'clock, representing more competitive negotiations, and the left-hand side, 7 to 12 o'clock, representing more collaborative negotiations. The right-hand side negotiations are characterized by lower levels of trust and involves negotiations that involve a finite amount of resources that could be distributed between two parties. These negotiations are more challenging since they are competitive forms of negotiation. This means processes can be positional and may be even confrontational. If you find that you're on the right-hand side of the clock in negotiations, it will give you an advantage to research the market well and to know your alternatives. Set your target price and reservation points and stick to them firmly. It also helps to open high and have small and low concessions. Additionally, you should back up your claims with facts and with logical and objective criteria for making your claims. Emphasize the value that you offer and create pressure with deadlines. Do not reveal too much information or emotion that exposes weakness in your bargaining power. Those negotiations on the left-hand side of the clock require more cooperation and collaboration and have a common ground which leans towards a win-win negotiation scenario, which usually leads to more incremental value. Their negotiations usually seen in business-to-business situations. These negotiations are somewhat easier in that you'll find a partner in the other party instead of an opposing force. Both parties should be respectful, have rapport, and should be willing to understand each other's interests and concerns. Both should be willing to compromise and have trades-off for a better overall outcome, prioritizing honest communication, building on common ground, and satisfaction of both parties. Now, let's talk about 8 phases of negotiations shown on the clock and discuss each of them briefly. First off is bartering at 1 o'clock. This is the most basic form of negotiation, not requiring any complex strategies or strong emotional ties, and not even necessarily involving money. It's the simplest form of trading one thing for another. There's also little to no knowledge of the things being exchanged. To put this into perspective, here's an example. You walk around the bazaar and there are 10 places where you can buy the same souvenir. There's no long-term relationship or dependency on any of these places. They're just different suppliers and you engage in the win-to-lose method with them and get the best price for you. The next one is haggling or bidding. It is a more confrontational than bartering method, and the end goal of this type of negotiation is usually to have the maximum amount of gains for yourself. This may require more strategic thinking and emphasis on landing the best deal possible. An example of bidding gone wrong because of lack of strategy is the UK government's sell-off of the 3G mobile phone licenses in the year of 2000s. They entered the bidding war without an alternative option, and mobile operators pay beyond the license's actual value, assuming that the licenses would be detrimental to the future market competitiveness. £22.5 billion was spent, but it took 8 years for 3G technology to become profitable. The next one is hard bargaining at 4 o'clock. This is a more complex than haggling and bidding technique because it requires more persuasion tactics and can employ certain strategies like gambits and walking away. However, although there is still competitiveness, there is also a mix of cooperation. Both parties would want a compromise, but they also look after their own interests and try to maximize their own gains as much as possible. In hard bargaining, there usually are different suppliers, but you want to maintain a relationship as well. There aren't many variables. A procurement expert from Procurement Tactics had a lot of experience with this type of negotiation. For example, he said that in the sourcing of a private label where different suppliers can deliver your product next to price, the long term relationship with supplier becomes more important. Dealing 5 to 6 o'clock. This now calls for a more collaborative approach as both parties work together to find an outcome that suits them both. At this stage, necessary moves are being made to make the deal work, as this is the main goal of this phase. There is also little opportunity to gather mutual gains because of this. Next one is concession trading, 6 to 7 o'clock. Concession tradings are where both parties make compromises so that they can meet each other halfway. This is a collaborative negotiation style that aims to find mutually beneficial solutions. Next one is win-win at 8 o'clock. Now, we must emphasize that although this type of negotiation is called win-win, this does not necessarily mean that a win-win will be the outcome of the situation. However, this phase of clock means that both parties understand the other's needs and interests and everyone comes up with solutions to meet those needs and interests. This is mostly in strategic relationships. An example is with A brands with fast moving consumer goods, FMCG, or negotiations between government and construction companies. There are several variables and both parties need from each other. Negotiation skills are more about listening and understanding than taking the bigger piece of the pie. Next one is partnership joint problem solving, 9 to 10 o'clock. This type of negotiation has a stronger bond of trust between both parties and there's an established foundation of the relationship. This requires both parties to be united in solving shared problems. There's more effort put into open communication and working towards a common goal. The last one is relationship building, 10 to 12 o'clock. This is the highest form of negotiation where there is complete trust and integrity in the dealings. There's complete unity in solving problems and meeting needs, and there's no friction between any discussions or dealings. There's prioritization of long-term relationship that involves parties that are building together rather than immediate outcomes. This is when both parties are very dependent on each other. If one company goes bankrupt, the other company goes bankrupt as well. Examples here are the negotiations between American Airlines and Boeing, where American Airlines operates aircraft manufactured by Boeing. Imagine if American Airlines, as a major buyer, attempts to secure extremely favorable terms from Boeing, such as very low prices for aircraft or favorable payment terms. As a result, Boeing might agree to these terms to secure the contract with American Airlines, but could ultimately face financial difficulties due to unfavorable terms. This could actually be a very risky strategy for American Airlines, as Boeing's bankruptcy would also have serious consequences for the aviation industry as a whole, particularly for aircraft delivery and market competition. Additionally, it could lead to disruptions in American Airlines operations, such as delays in the delivery of new aircraft or absence of maintenance services. Therefore, it is very important for companies who are negotiating at the latest part of the clock phase to adopt a balanced approach in negotiations, striving for reasonable terms that are beneficial for both themselves and their suppliers. Overly aggressive negotiations may yield short-term benefits, but in the long run, this could result in negative consequences for all parties involved. To wrap up briefly what we've just been talking about during this lesson, here is a short summary. What we've just learned is that negotiations are non-linear processes but rather dynamic interactions. This makes the negotiation clock phase useful as a reference point in how to approach negotiations depending on what type it is, whether it's competitive or more towards collaborative approach. These approaches can then be adopted to achieve successful outcomes. Once again, this was Aleksandra Panic, and if you would like to learn more about negotiations, be sure to check our Negotiation for Procurement Professionals course. It was wonderful to have you here with me today, and I wish to see you in our next lesson.